Max, I'll throw it over to you. Time for some combat corner.
Yeah, still slowing down a little on the recaps and previews. I thought I'd do something a little more fun on this one because I haven't been as into the cards lately as at some points where I'm like every card I'm watching entirely bottom to top. So I tried to think about the fights that got me most excited. These aren't necessarily the most talented high level fights you can put on, like pound for pound across the UFC. Any bad blood rivalry or extra reasons, storylines give boosts to these matchups. So there are some excellent fighters in here that are kind of snubs in a sense that they're amazing fighters, but I'm more interested in watching fighters who are evidently worse than them fight for either entertainment or storyline reasons. So, with that preamble said, maybe the fight that it's most needed for number 5 on my list, Jorge Masvidal versus Leon Edwards at welterweight. These definitely two of the top 5, top 10, depending where you rank Masvidal after that latest Usman knockout. But not so far removed from that just violent performance against Diaz that was kind of the permanent star making match where he took all the hype he had generated off the Askren knockout and solidified it. Usman just kind of a horrible stylistic matchup for him in that he always has to worry about getting taken down, held against the cage. You've got to think against a more stand-up, consistent fighter. Leon Edwards does like the clinch, but he doesn't have that same strength as Masvidal. We'd see Masvidal at his striking best, but against a chess master of an opponent, Leon Edwards, who just no one has an easy time offensively against. He's really hard to get off. And watching that chess master style attacking Masvidal, seeing if it can slow him down or if Masvidal can get through as Diaz did, but earlier, more consistently, and of course, following it up. Those are all the stylistic reasons this would be a really fun matchup. But that's probably not enough to justify it in the top 5. What does is that backstage confrontation they had after UFC London, after Masvidal had knocked out Till, was getting interviewed. Edwards walked up to talk shit, and Masvidal literally dropped him with a 3-piece in the soda. Still not quite clear on how he doesn't have an arrest warrant out for him in the UK. I'm not sure if they could host it there, but he's made it this far okay, not having returned in there. So I'm sure that the repercussions of that will not be handled by the law at this point. But the UFC has shown in the Khabib Conor matchup that they're totally willing to use that kind of backstage footage. So you know the build up for it would be fun. The bad blood would make a really fun press conference, and that heightens all the stylistic fun of that matchup and puts it in at number 5 for me. At number 4, two fighters whose star has also fallen a bit over the past couple of years. 4 years ago, this would have 100% been the number 1 on this list, but Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Jon Jones kind of in limbo zone, the twilight zone right now. We're not really too sure what's going on. He's been over a year since he said he was moving to heavyweight. So you've got to think the bulk and the muscle, based on his own description of how he plans his heavyweight move, puts him out of light heavyweight. So he needs a heavyweight matchup next. Ngannou Game is going to be the next heavyweight fight. If Jon Jones and Ngannou was going to happen, it would have happened already. I think Jon Jones needs another heavyweight opponent, and I think Stipe is an amazing one for him at that. Because Stipe has all the things that you wonder about when you see Jon Jones's fights at light heavyweight. When he fights the bigger guys, he hasn't looked as effortless for him. It's been a lot more of a struggle when he can't use that reach advantage. And Stipe has that frame, not to mention probably being more skilled than anyone Jon Jones has fought. I mean, he beat DC twice. We saw how much DC tested Jon, and DC's 5'10", 5'11". The bigger Stipe with better striking timing, would be a really entertaining matchup. At heavyweight, age probably has the least amount of detriment on fighters' longevity. So despite these two guys being near the twilight stages of their career, not sure what else is held for Stipe at heavyweight. This would be an awesome fight. I'm saying this 100% as a Stipe fan, hoping you could at least see him go out, putting like the first real L on John Jones. But I think that's would be a phenomenal fight and easily ranks number 4. Number 3, this I think most likely in all the other fights I'm going to describe actually I think are going to be made or have been made. So less suspense and credit to UFC matchmakers, I guess. But at number 3, I've got Stylebender versus Whitaker 2, the rematch. I talked in the last pod or one before that about how these instant rematches deprive the fight of some storylines that can be really entertaining. And I think Stylebender Whitaker 2 has all of that. Mostly looking at Robert Whitaker, but you can't ask much more from Stylebender. Of what he's done at middleweight since taking the belt from Whitaker has been pretty near flawless, defending it. The Romero performance, the only one that's really a blip. But after that, taking out Costa and Vittori, especially Costa with all the hype that was on Costa at that time. Vittori, a very similar fight, but he's shown at middleweight that he's the best right now. And there's a big question mark you have to put on anyone who's challenging him, especially Whitaker, who's already beat. But you look at Stylebender's one loss, a loss to Jan Blachowicz, and it was the striking technique of Jan that made that fight a win for him. It was the ability to check the leg kicks, to fight it at his pace. His power was a huge part in that, slowing it down to a speed where he could actually outround Stylebender, and of course his size a huge part in holding him down those last 2 rounds. But the technicality, virtuosoness of that performance from Blachowicz seems like a state Whitaker's been in his last 3 fights. You look at the Darren Till fight, the Cannonier fight, and then the Gastelum fight, and he's been near perfect in all of them, other than getting dropped by Till, which I think happened in the very first round. So since then, 4, 7, 12 rounds of near perfection from him, going against guys like Cannonier and Gastelum, who have that real one-punch knockout power. The jab against Gastelum was such money. The combo head kick against Cannonier, the wrestling he put on Gastelum, which so another thing Blachowicz exposed or showed against Stylebender was you have to mix up the striking to the wrestling to land the takedown on him. And Whitaker, such a phenomenal athlete, a naturally gifted striker who's really put in the work grappling, has the athleticism to merge those two together. So I think everything we've seen from Whitaker is exactly what you would have asked for coming off that loss, and gives him the tools to handle that rematch. So I'm really excited for it. I'll try to move a bit quicker here. This segment dragging on a little longer than I thought. Number 2 on the list, another fight that is going to happen for the heavyweight belt, Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane. Francis Ngannou, the hype around him, you could understand if I told you about the sport right now for the first time. After that loss to Stipe, after that disastrous mental blockade against Derek Lewis, he wins 4 fights in like a cumulative less than 4 minutes, gets his rematch against Stipe. It looks absolutely perfect. The patience, the power, the technique to make the fight happen where he wants to, the explosiveness. He's done it all and looks like such a formidable juggernaut. Coming right off after that Stipe fight, I'm not sure I could have expected anyone to beat him in the next 3 years at heavyweight. But lo and behold, just a few months later, Cyril Gane with 2 wins has kind of emerged in my head as the favorite to do that. He just fights like no other heavyweight, and it's the style you'd need to be a guy like Ngannou. Such a technical fighter, so impossible to hit. You look at the first performance Stipe had against Ngannou that was so beautiful, and the improvements Ngannou made means that kind of defensive, evasive style is going to have to be a lot more technically implemented. Gon doesn't have the wrestling Stipe did, but no one's been able to hit him yet. Like, I don't think anyone's landed anything really clean on him his entire UFC career. He's gone up against Tanner Boser, Junior Dos Santos, Alexander Volkov, all power punchers with a lot of knockouts in the division. And none of them have landed anything clean on him. I think I didn't mention Jairzinho Rosenstrike in there. So after going up against four of those guys, it's a huge question if Ngannou can land, and that's kind of the entire match boiled down to one thing. Can the really explosive, terrifying power puncher land on the impossibly skilled, evasive karate Muay Thai heavyweight? That's going to be an amazing heavyweight fight. Can't wait for it. But number one's got to go to what I always call the deepest division, which after the era of the Eagle, Khabib Nurmagomedov retired. We have a new champion in Charles Oliveira, who took home the belt after beating Michael Chandler. But it was a matchup where you could say that neither guy was really the guaranteed bona fide number one in the division at the time. That honor had to go to Dustin Poirier after the consistent work he put in with just higher level performances over a longer period of time than Oliveira had. At the top of the list, the crystallized diamond, as opposed to the meteoric Oliveira. Dustin won his money fight with Conor, so no shame that fight being made between Oliveira and Chandler. Oliveira gets it, which is awesome because he's just been so hot in the UFC for so long on that meteoric rise, like I said. And now he's going to fight Dustin Poirier, two guys who are, by strength of schedule, the best in the division for sure, looking to take the award of the number one belt in the UFC, in my opinion. I've added kind of an asterisk to this, and that's Islam Makhachev, because this is a guy where we really don't know how good he is. He could be better than either of those guys, and we just haven't seen it proven against the top of the division yet. Just looking at the career Khabib had, it's clear he could have been champion for quite a few more years than he was if he had been awarded that title shot earlier. So I don't quite feel comfortable saying the throne has been settled until the belt has been offered to each of those three. And when the dust clears between that threesome, number one will be clear. Any of those three fighting is the number one fight you can make for me in the UFC right now. Whew. All right. Agree, disagree, feel free to let me know. I'm sticking with those picks though. Need a little bit of a mental reset here, so we'll be right back after this.